A young golfer aspiring to become a pro. A sumo wrestler aiming to be the best. Manga artist Chiba Tetsuya has produced many popular sports manga like these. His 1967 boxing manga was a massive hit with young readers and established a new standard for the genre. He continues to draw short manga about his everyday life and personal experiences, which are serialized in manga magazines. He also conveys his own experiences with war through manga.
私は漫画が大好きなんですね。漫画っていうこのなんか子供が楽しむものだけだったのに、今は大人の人も読んでくれる。その自分の思ってることをいろんな形で表現できるんだということを伝えたいということはずっと思って。
And he teaches at a university, passing on his expertise to aspiring manga artists.
人間の顔の描き分けのコツのお話をしましょう。
Chiba is over 80 years old, but he's far from retirement. He shares with us his passion for manga and his hopes for the future.
I've just read this fascinating collection of short manga written by Chiba Tetsuya and published this year. A lot of the stories are autobiographical and take us behind the scenes of his art and how he began as an artist. Mr. Chiba has dominated the Japanese manga world for decades, and many of the artists drawn into the field by him appear in these stories. Today I'll be asking him some questions about how he came to create manga that capture the imaginations of so many people.
Hello, Mr. Chiba. I'm Robert Campbell.
Nice to meet you. I'm Chiba Tetsuya.
A pleasure.
Welcome.
Today you've kindly invited us into your home and studio. I see behind you are shelves lined with all your books. What is this room for?
It used to be full of desks where I worked along with my assistants. We would often stay up all night working together.
I see.
Chiba has written several manga series for weekly magazines. But after suffering a detached retina at the age of 55, he cut back on his workload. He also changed his workspace.
ここからちょっと屋根裏になりますので、ちょっと狭いですよ。
It's about 15 square meters in size.
ここで私はほとんどここに閉じこもって仕事してます。水場もあるし、ここにないのはトイレだけない。この奥はちょっと仮眠所っていうかベッドになってて、ちょっと目を休めたり、本を読んだり、ラジオ聞いたり。この空間がね、この狭さがちょうど私にとってはちょうどいい。普段はもうちょっとこう雑然としてますけど。
Chiba's style of drawing manga hasn't changed in over 60 years. He first draws a rough sketch with a pencil and decides on the composition. Then he goes over the contours with an ink pen. He prefers pens with soft tips that make it easier to adjust the pressure and thickness of his lines. He's now working on a collection of manga depicting his everyday life and childhood memories. He's begun sketching a memory of his first love back in elementary school.
バランスが悪くて気持ち悪いんですよね、書いててね。
He remembers how he wanted to ask his grandmother for advice, but was afraid to do so. He wants to convey the boyish hesitation he felt at the time.
なんかこう読みづらいんじゃないかな、これじゃ他に目がいっちゃうなとかね、なんかそういうなんかいろんなことを考えてんだね、なんか無意識のうちに。高3、今日はなんだ。
After drawing the scene 6 times, he decides to call it a day. He tries again the next day. In the end, he decides to redo the entire page from scratch.
この文字感をね、この指だけでね表現しようとしたんだけど、ちょっとそのバランスが悪かったね。
He changed the composition to show the boy in full length rather than from the waist up.
What's the secret to conveying the subtle emotions of the characters in your work?
I try to imagine the kind of childhood the character must have had, and I think about how that must have molded their personality, and I base it on that. I draw from the people I've met, my family, the characters in the books I've read, and the movies I've seen. There are so many kinds of people out there. I have a whole list of characters that are stored in my head, so when drawing a manga, I refer back to this list.
What if you were to draw me? I'm meeting you for the first time, and I'm really nervous. What sort of features would you focus on?
When meeting someone for the first time and feeling nervous, you show that tension in your shoulders. Maybe you clench your fists.
Makes sense.
A common technique in manga is to add drops of sweat.
Sweat.
A character may be smiling on the outside, but you can add sweat to reveal that they're under some stress. This is just one of the tricks of the trade used to express a character's inner emotion in manga.
I hear you prefer to draw freehand. Why is that?
So I try to avoid using a ruler, even when drawing a straight line.
Oh.
If I were to draw a futuristic city or some kind of vehicle, it would probably be better to have clean, crisp lines. But rather than that, I'm more interested in depicting average, everyday people going about their daily life, their trials and tribulations. Children, too. So the slightly wobbly feel of hand-drawn lines makes it easier to depict warmth. For instance, the warmth of wooden houses.
I've talked to animators who draw freehand, and they say that it is easier to convey warmth and emotion if there is some sense of movement.
I feel the same way. If you want to make the character look nervous, for instance, you can show how their hands are trembling or how their face is twitching. It's much easier to express that sort of feeling when you draw by hand.
I see.
I want to draw manga that can be understood without dialogue or narration, so I try to minimize dialogue in my work. Sound effects are important, but I try to use as little written text as possible. I want even little kids who can't read to be able to laugh or to feel sad for the characters. That's the most important element for me.
Ashita no Joe is a manga series that was serialized for 5 years starting in 1967. Chiba teamed up with a leading writer of sports manga to breathe life into the story. The protagonist, Joe, is a poor and lonely boy who discovers boxing. No matter how many times he's knocked down, he always gets up again. The serialization coincided with Japan's economic growth and a widening social divide. Young people of the time identified with the protagonist's struggles. In fact, when the rival boxer in the story died, fans went as far as to hold an actual funeral. The last scene is a legendary moment in the history of Japanese manga. It represents a turning point for Chiba. After a fight to the death, Joe sits slumped on a stool with a smile on his face.
This is the original manga drawing, isn't it? Wow. This is amazing. This is my favorite scene.
I really struggled with this scene. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in all my years of drawing manga.
Oh.
I visited the story writer to ask for his advice. I couldn't think of a final image, but he brushed me off, saying, what was the point of discussing the story at this stage when I'd been drawing it the way I wanted to all this time? He told me the matter was entirely in my hands. So I went back and consulted with my brother and my assistants, and we came up with several ideas for the final scene. I think we came up with as many as 20, but none of them seemed right. Seeing how I couldn't make up my mind, my editor urged me to go back and read a chapter that I'd drawn several months back, because he felt that it was at the core of the story. I normally avoid reading any of my past works because I get the urge to redo them. I don't reread them. But my editor insisted that I look at this particular chapter, so I gave in and reread it and came across a scene where Joe talks about how he wants to live his life. And he says, I want to burst into flame and burn bright and red, so that in the end all that remains is white ash. That's the way I want to live. I'd forgotten that scene. So after revisiting that scene, I knew exactly how I wanted to end the story. I envisioned him burning out.
So much thought went into that last scene. To me, it feels that he's not just burnt out. It's more than exhaustion. That smile on his face, I can't help but feel it expresses his satisfaction with how he's chosen to lead his life. That's how I see it.
Joe has given it his all. He realizes that there's nothing more he can do. He's achieved total combustion, leaving white ash in his wake and that slight smile. When I finally came up with that image, I was overcome with gratitude to the editor who helped me, the writer who provided me with the story, and all the fans who supported the manga. The sense of doing a job well done is reflected in that smile. I felt much like Joe did in that moment.
At that time, the series caused a huge social phenomenon.
It made me realize that people were reading manga not just for enjoyment, for something to read. They were actually identifying personally with the characters and overlapping their own lives with them. After coming to this realization, I went through a time where I was scared of drawing manga.
Chiba's family began living in China when he was 2 years old. In the chaos following the war, they hid in an attic. Chiba's only pleasure came from drawing pictures for his younger brothers. Shortly after returning to Japan in 1946, he experienced a life-changing moment.
I was almost 10 years old when I first encountered manga. A glance at a single panel was enough to tell whether a character was super happy or devastatingly sad. It just took a look. Until then, I had been reading various fairy tales and classics, as well as novels. I was a voracious reader. Most of those books had illustrations.
Right.
They helped stir my imagination. But the concept of telling a story through a series of illustrated panels was totally new to me. I experienced culture shock. I never knew such a world existed.
I understand that you would draw pictures for your little brothers when you were young, and that experience ultimately became your foundation. It became your starting point as a manga artist.
When we were leaving China, we had to go into hiding for a while. My little brothers would cry out of sheer boredom. So, in order to pacify them, I would draw them pictures of stories that I'd read or photos that I'd seen, drawing on my memories, and I'd show them the pictures. It was like putting on a picture story.
I see.
At the time, I was completely and totally focused on how to make my brothers happy and keep them captivated. That focus is something that keeps me going to this day. In retrospect, it was an incredibly difficult time for us, but it was fun drawing for my brothers, and they enjoyed looking at my drawings. It helped us to escape reality and survive a stressful situation. It really saved me.
Chiba has created works that depict his wartime experiences to pass on to future generations. In 1994, in a corner of Sensoji Temple, he and his friends set up a Jizo statue. A Jizo is a Buddhist guardian deity who protects children. During their return to Japan from China, many families were separated. Chiba designed the statue in the hope that it would help them find solace.
When designing the statue, what were you most careful of? What sort of image did you have in mind?
I drew on my own family. My youngest brother had just been born, so my mother had to flee while carrying him on her back. There were many such families with young children, so I couldn't help but think of the three of us traveling together. My colleagues took a look at my rough sketch and said they liked it. So that became the basis of the Jizo that we dedicated to Sensoji Temple. I have a lot of painful memories of my experiences in the war and its aftermath. I don't want to relive those memories, especially the hunger and the cold. But I can't forget what the lack of food or clothing would do to people, to men who were usually kind and gentle. I saw them turn into demons in order to protect themselves and their families. That's what war can do to people. That's what war is. The elderly, children, and the physically weak are the first to die. And while they're dying, those with weapons are transforming into demons. That's the reality of war. That's what it is. So, as painful as it is to relive the experience, I believe that it's important to convey that reality to the younger generation.
You've been active as a manga artist for 65 years. Even now, you continue to publish many works. What keeps you going? What would you say is the source of your motivation to create?
I keep thinking of what I myself would like to read, and imagine myself surrounded by the world I'm creating. I think I'm still very much a child at heart. I read articles, watch the news, and observe the people around me. Their antics sometimes make me burst out laughing. Then there are times when I reflect on my own actions and think how immature and silly I am at this ripe old age. I can't help but laugh at myself. I draw from all these feelings to slowly put together my stories. I guess it's like having a bird's-eye view of everyday life. In other words, I'm not depicting the way things really are. I try to step back and take an objective view of this old man who is stumbling around and doing silly things even into his 80s. I catch my breath as I see him about to fall, but hopefully at the very last moment he manages not to trip and I let out a sigh of relief. When drawing such a scene, it's like taking on multiple roles. I'm directing the film, choosing the actors and location, designing the costumes, and conducting background research all at the same time. That's the life of a manga artist. When making a movie, the director, cameraman, and scriptwriter are constantly at odds with each other. That's what's going on inside my head.
While continuing to draw manga, Chiba is also actively involved in nurturing young talent. In 2005, he began lecturing at a university that offers a major in manga. Because of the pandemic, he's now teaching online. The focus is on teaching practical skills, so he tries to provide clear instructions.
子供はこの下の方にね目を描くの。こうやってやってね。大人はね上の方に。目の位置、鼻の位置、口の位置。だいたい小さな子供は下の方にこう操作目や鼻を描くと可愛く描けるね。大人はこういうふうに。顔いっぱいにこうなんかこう造作があると少し大人っぽくなるし、というような書き分けですね。
What is it that motivates you to share your expertise, know-how, and experiences with young people?
I think it's simply because I love manga. Manga used to be something read by children only, but now adults read it too. Some artists create manga that's expressed in really poetic ways. People create work that can be poetic or philosophical. Some create manga that are historical. Manga provides an outlet for people to share their thoughts in all kinds of different ways. I've always had this desire to communicate that fact to people who like drawing or illustrating.
How's your relationship with your students?
I try to read their works as much as I can and give them specific advice. Like, for example, to use a center page spread for a particularly moving scene. They find specific advice like that useful. I keep telling them to put themselves in the shoes of the reader. You know what's going on because you wrote it, but what about someone reading it for the very first time? Or someone who can barely read? Will that person be able to follow the story? I tell them to imagine showing their work to a kid brother or sister, a young child yet to start elementary school. It really makes a difference in their work. Almost right away, they start to draw in a way that gets the meaning across even to a young child.
Freedom of expression has become a hot topic in many ways. As someone whose work is widely read, what are your thoughts on this?
I want to be free to draw whatever kind of manga I like. At the same time, however, I don't want to cause people to feel uncomfortable or disappointed in any way. And there are certain subjects, such as religion and politics, that should be avoided at all cost. Everyone has different beliefs or standards by which they live. I don't think it's right to make fun of or criticize such beliefs. As long as you bear this in mind as a creator of manga, I believe you can express yourself in various ways. It's difficult to draw a line. There are times when I may unintentionally hurt someone's feelings.
How do you feel about the shift in values over time, as well as the changes you've seen in your life?
It seems that the pandemic has created a paradigm shift. Our values, our way of life, and work styles have undergone a major change. I have a feeling that we're going to see a whole new world. But in a strange way, it's something I'm looking forward to.
How so?
I'm hoping that people will start to see things in a different light and appreciate the meaning of life. People will be more mindful of the environment, nature, the work they do, and their relationships with others. I feel that we are at the threshold of new possibilities.
I think that applies in particular to the environmental crisis. Because of the pandemic, we've been forced to go about life in different ways. But I'm hoping that this will inspire us to think of our abilities, our lifespan, and our planet as a whole.
I think it's going to be a difficult journey. Many people will suffer. They will be at a loss as to how to make ends meet, how to go about life. People will doubtlessly struggle. But eventually, they'll come to realize the importance of reaching out to one another, the importance of communicating, and of relying on others for help when you need it, of reaching out and helping each other in times of need. I suppose that I'm hoping that this awakening will help us become better citizens of our planet.
We asked Chiba to write a kanji that best reflects his approach to life. The kanji he selected is ima, which means now.
I like the character for now. We talk about the past, present, and future, all of which are important. But I believe that the most important of all is the present moment. I always think about doing the best I can at any given moment, creating manga, expressing myself as best I can. At the center of all of that is now.
What in particular would you like to do now?
My strength and my eyesight are failing, and I don't have many more years left to live. But I believe I still have it in me to draw manga that will make people happy and bring them solace. It may be just one frame or one page, but I would like to continue drawing manga to the best of my ability.